My husband's voice boomed across the decorated conference room. "Stop acting like you own me, Jane. You don't get to tell me where I go or who I'm with." And then the laughter. It started with his VP, George, a guy who always smelled like stale whiskey and cheap cologne. He clinked his glass against Sean's, a bro code celebration. Then others joined in. A chuckle here, a snicker there, until it felt like the whole room was in on the joke. The joke was me. I counted 17 seconds. For 17 seconds, I stood frozen in my burgundy dress, a champagne flute trembling in my hand. 17 seconds while my husband, Sean, publicly dismantled our marriage in front of 20 of his colleagues. Their amused, blurred faces swam before my eyes, distorted by the tears I absolutely refused to let fall. Sean's words hung in the air, heavy and sharp, like a banner of my humiliation. "Stop acting like you own me." I just smiled. It was the only weapon I had left, a brittle, thin smile that probably looked more like a grimace. When the laughter finally died down, the silence was even louder. I looked right at him, my voice surprisingly steady. "You're right. We're not together anymore." He scoffed, thinking I was just playing along, trying to save face. He turned back to George, already dismissing me. He had no idea. He never had any idea. "Are you watching this alone?" Right now, I felt like the only person in the world, surrounded by people, but totally, completely alone. If you've ever felt like that, like the whole world is laughing at you, hit that subscribe button. Don't be one of the bystanders. Be an ally. Or, if you're one of the ones who would have laughed, go to the comments right now and tell me why. I want to know. When Sean finally stumbled home that night, long after I'd left the party, his key didn't work. He jiggled it. He cursed. He slammed his shoulder against the heavy oak. But the locks were new, military grade. The neighbor told him something he'll never forget. I wasn't there to see it, but I can imagine it. And I know they laughed. Now it's 5:45 a.m., the morning after the party. The sky over the Minneapolis skyline is just starting to bleed from black to a bruised purple. I stand in my 19th floor apartment in the North Loop, the kind of place with floor-to-ceiling windows that make the city look like a carpet of diamonds. I'm making coffee, his coffee, with the mechanical precision of someone planning a careful, meticulous demolition. The locksmith's business card is already tucked into the pocket of my robe. My phone, resting on the cold granite countertop, shows 3 missed calls from Alexandra, the shark in a power suit divorce attorney I'd contacted from the parking garage last night, sitting in my car for 2 hours while the humiliation finally cooled into a diamond-hard rage. Those 17 seconds of laughter are still echoing in my ears, a perfect hellish loop. The coffee maker gurgles its familiar morning song. In our bedroom, Sean is sleeping, undisturbed. He's blissfully, arrogantly unaware that his little theatrical performance, his public power play, had just triggered something irreversible. 2 sugars, no cream. I'd made this exact combination 5,110 times over 14 years of marriage. I'd done the math while I waited for the locksmith last night. 5,110 mornings I'd started my day by serving him. This would be the last. My hands move through the routine, a muscle memory I can't shake. But my mind is miles away, replaying every toxic detail from that party. The way George had clinked his whiskey glass against Sean's after the declaration, like they'd rehearsed this humiliation. The way Michelle from accounting, a girl barely old enough to rent a car, had tried so hard not to look directly at me, her bright pink nails drumming a nervous rhythm against her clutch. The way the room had smelled of stale cinnamon potpourri and expensive, desperate cologne right at the moment my world cracked down the middle. This apartment, this view, had been my father's final gift to me. His inheritance, the money he earned over 30 years as a construction foreman, his calloused hands and broken back, transformed into what Sean so generously called our investment. Sean, of course, had never contributed a single penny toward the down payment, or the mortgage, or the insane monthly HOA fees. My consulting business, the one I'd built from scratch while supporting him through his overpriced MBA at Wharton, paid for this life. It paid for the Egyptian cotton sheets he was currently drooling on. It paid for the expensive suits he wore to humiliate me in. Yet somehow, over the years, the narrative had shifted. He'd rewrite our history in real time. At parties, he'd talk about his apartment, his view, his success story, climbing from junior analyst to senior executive. My name was the only one on the deed, but possession, I'd learned the hard way, was 9/10 perception, and Sean was a master of perception. I hear him stirring. The rustle of those 1,500 thread count sheets I'd bought with my year-end bonus, sheets he'd complained were an excessive spend right before he bought himself a new set of golf clubs. The irony isn't lost on me anymore. Nothing is lost on me after last night's brutal clarity. Jane. His voice, thick with sleep, carries that particular morning roughness that once, a long time ago, made my stomach flutter. Now, it just sounds like gravel. Coffee ready on the counter? It is, I call back. My voice is steady as a news anchor delivering a tragedy. I listen to his footsteps padding across the hardwood floors, the floors we'd argued about. He wanted cold, imported marble like some gaudy hotel lobby. I wanted warmth, something that felt like home. We'd compromised on dark walnut hardwood, which meant I'd paid for something neither of us truly wanted, another small surrender. He emerges from the bedroom, wearing nothing but his old Princeton boxer shorts. He stretches, his shoulder muscles rolling. Sean maintains his body with the religious dedication of a man who believes physical perfection can compensate for a total deficiency of character. At 41, he still looks like the man I'd married at 27. Except now, I can see past the polished surface to the hollow, rotting architecture beneath. What time did you get home last night? He doesn't even look at me. His eyes are already glued to his phone as he reaches for the mug. The question is as casual as weather commentary. Around 11. I lie. The lie comes easily. I'd actually spent 2 hours in the parking garage, making phone calls and scrubbing off my carefully applied makeup with a baby wipe I found in the glove compartment. Then I'd sat in our building's lobby until 2:00 a.m., having a long, life-altering conversation with Denzel, the night doorman, a conversation that changed everything I thought I knew about Tuesday afternoons. Sean just grunts, already scrolling. George is sending over the investment paperwork today. Need your signature by 5. The words hang in the air between us, as stale and ugly as last night's humiliation. George's startup, a cryptocurrency venture that sounded to my consultant's ear like money laundering dressed up in high-tech vocabulary. They wanted my inheritance, the $400,000. My father's entire life's work. Sean had been pushing it for weeks. Each time, his tone was more insistent. He wasn't asking. He was informing. I want to see the business plan first, I say. The same thing I said yesterday. The same thing I said last week. Now he looks up. His blue eyes, the ones I used to think were so kind, narrow with that familiar blend of condescension and irritation I'd grown to despise. We've been over this, Jane. George went to Wharton. He knows what he's doing. So did the executives at Enron, I reply, my voice flat. His jaw tightens. He sets down his mug with deliberate, controlled force. The clack of ceramic on granite is sharp, aggressive. Why do you always have to make things difficult? This right here is why I said what I said last night. You try to control everything. And there it is. The bridge, the neat little pathway from his public humiliation of me to this morning's gaslighting. I'd learned his patterns. It was a sick, predictable dance. Humiliate me, then blame me for being humiliated. Demand something, then accuse me of being demanding when I ask a simple question. Take, then paint me as selfish for noticing. You're right, I say. The words are smooth as the silk blouse I'd worn to my own execution. I shouldn't try to control things, like my own inheritance, or my own life. He misses the acid edge in my voice entirely. He's already confident in his victory. Exactly. See? When you're reasonable, everything just works better. He walks over, presses a kiss to my forehead. It doesn't feel like affection. It feels like a stamp of ownership, like he's branding me. Wear that burgundy dress again tonight, he murmurs against my hair. There's another party at the Marriott, client thing. My stomach turns to ice. The same dress? It looked good on you. Powerful, he says. He adds the last word with a smirk, remembering the saleswoman's comment I'd foolishly shared with him. Besides, these clients weren't at yesterday's party. No one will know it's the same dress. Except I would know. He wanted me to know. I'd be wearing my humiliation like a uniform, a walking, breathing reminder of those 17 seconds of laughter. And in that instant, I understood. This wasn't a careless suggestion. This was the point. He wanted me to wear it. He He wanted me marked by last night, branded by his public declaration of independence, while he played the devoted husband tonight for a new crowd. I'll think about it, I say, my voice as neutral as Switzerland. He's already walking back to the bedroom, dismissing me with the supreme confidence of a man who has never once in his life had his locks changed. Don't overthink it, Jane. It's just a dress. But it wasn't just a dress. It was everything. It was every small surrender, every swallowed objection, every time I'd made myself smaller so he could feel bigger. The burgundy dress was just the latest costume in the long-running theater of our marriage, a marriage where Sean directed every single scene, and I'd somehow forgotten I was allowed to walk off the stage. My phone buzzes on the counter, a text from Alexandra, the lawyer. Room in my schedule at noon, if you're ready to proceed. I look at the locksmith's card next to my phone. I look at Sean's coffee mug, his lip print still on the rim. And then I look at the sunrise, finally painting our apartment in shades of brilliant, blinding gold. Everything looks different in this light. Temporary, changeable, like a stage set just waiting to be struck. Actually, I call toward the bedroom, loud enough for him to hear over the hiss of his shower. I know exactly what I'm wearing tonight. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that I'd be wearing it right here, in my apartment, with my locks, living my life. The 17 seconds of laughter had finally stopped echoing. All that remained was the sound of my own heartbeat, steady, certain, counting down to freedom. Sean's hand presses into the small of my back, his fingers spreading wide across the burgundy fabric. He's marking his territory. We're walking into the Marriott's grand ballroom, and the pressure feels different now, not protective, it's possessive. The way a man might grip a briefcase full of money he's about to lose. The room is sparkling. It's that over-the-top corporate holiday sparkle. Gold garlands, crystal centerpieces that must have cost a fortune, and enough twinkling lights to power a small town. The air is thick with the smell of expensive perfume, top-shelf bourbon, and that particular scent of corporate ambition, sharp, metallic, and desperate. "Remember," Sean murmurs against my ear. His breath is hot, already stinking of the whiskey he'd slammed in the limo on the way over. "These are important clients. Try to be pleasant. Pleasant." The word sticks in my throat like a shard of glass. After last night, after he'd let his hyena pack of colleagues laugh at me, he wanted pleasant. I'm about to respond, about to say something I can never take back, when I see her. Michelle. From accounting, she's standing near the bar, and she's wearing a burgundy dress. It's not identical, but it's so damn close it can't be a coincidence. The neckline plunges lower, the hemline is dangerously higher, but the color is the exact same shade of humiliation. She has her back to us, her long blonde hair cascading down her spine like a waterfall of betrayal. Melissa, George's wife, appears at my elbow, materializing out of the crowd with 2 champagne flutes. Her eyes dart from me to Michelle and back again. Her face cycles through 5 different expressions before it lands, painfully, on pity. "Jane, you look lovely," she says, handing me a glass. She's obviously struggling not to stare at the matching dresses. "Interesting color choice tonight," I say, my voice like ice. I don't look at Melissa. I'm watching Sean. I'm watching the exact moment he notices Michelle. His hand falls from my back, instantly, like I'd suddenly become radioactive. His pupils dilate, his jaw goes slack, and for 3 full seconds, he forgets I exist. In those 3 seconds, I see our entire marriage, every late meeting, every unexplained text he'd hidden by tilting his phone away, every single Tuesday afternoon. Michelle turns then, as if she felt his gaze on her. Her eyes meet mine over Sean's shoulder. To her credit, she has the decency to look uncomfortable. Her cheeks flush a bright, guilty pink as she registers our matching dresses. But she doesn't move. She doesn't look away. Instead, she lifts her chin, just slightly, a silent declaration of war, disguised as confidence. And that's when the light hits them, the diamonds in her ears, new, expensive, and sickeningly, horribly familiar. They look exactly like the earrings Sean had claimed were for his mother's birthday last month, the ones he said were a little over budget, the ones that came from our joint account. Do you feel that? That knot in your stomach? That's betrayal. It's the coldest, sickest feeling in the world, and right now I'm feeling it in front of 100 strangers. If you've ever been lied to, if you've ever been made to feel small by someone who is supposed to love you, you know what this feels like. Hit that subscribe button right now. Let me know you're here with me. It costs you nothing, but for me, knowing you're here It means everything. Not subscribing? It just tells me you're okay with this, that you're on his side. Those are beautiful earrings, I say to Melissa. My eyes never leave Michelle. Amazing how some women can wear such expensive jewelry to work events. Must be nice to have that kind of income. Melissa chokes on her champagne. George, the failed Wharton crypto bro, materializes beside his wife, his face already flushed with alcohol and that greedy, manic excitement. Sean, ready to make history, buddy? Just need Jane's signature on those papers and we are golden. My signature. My father's money. My inheritance. He wants me to sign it over to fund their little boys' club fantasy, while Sean's mistress stands 10 feet away, wearing my color and his diamonds. The room suddenly feels too hot, too bright, too full of people who see me as nothing more than a checkbook with legs. We should discuss the business plan first, I say. My voice cuts through their frat boy enthusiasm like a razor. I haven't seen any documentation, no revenue projections, no market analysis, nothing but promises and a Wharton credential. Sean's face darkens, that particular shade of blotchy red that always preceded his worst moments. Jane, we've discussed this. No, I interrupt. You've talked, I've listened. There's a difference. I take a slow sip of my champagne, letting the bubbles give me a courage I didn't know I had. It's $400,000, Sean. My father's money. Our money, he snaps. His voice rises just enough that the nearby conversations pause. People are turning. It's our money, Jane. Or have you forgotten what marriage means? George laughs nervously, trying to defuse the bomb he just watched his friend light. Hey, let's not turn business into... Into what? I ask, turning to face him fully. Into due diligence? Into protecting assets? Into asking a few basic professional questions about where $500,000 is going? The room has grown quiet. That particular awful hush that falls when people sense the drama is about to be better than the catering. Michelle has moved closer, pretending to examine a truly ugly painting on the wall, but she's eavesdropping. I can smell her perfume from here, something French and cloying. It makes my stomach turn. Sean grabs my elbow. His fingers dig in, hard enough to bruise. You're embarrassing me, he hisses, his voice low and venomous. I'm embarrassing you? The laugh that escapes me is hollow, brittle. That's rich. That is truly spectacularly rich considering last night. His grip tightens. Last night was nothing. You're being dramatic. 17 seconds, I say, my voice dangerously quiet. Your colleagues laughed at me for 17 seconds. Because you were being controlling. His voice booms. All pretense of privacy is gone. Abandoned. The jazz quartet in the corner actually stops playing. The saxophone cuts off mid-note, a pathetic little squawk. The entire room is watching now. 50, maybe 60 people in expensive clothes, holding drinks that cost more than my father's hourly wage. All of them witnessing round 2 of the Jane Lawson public humiliation tour. Michelle has turned fully toward us, her expression unreadable, but her body language is screaming anticipation. Sean's finger jabs toward my chest. It doesn't touch me, but it's close enough to feel aggressive. You always do this, Jane. You act like you own me, like I can't make a single decision without your permission. It's the same line as last night, the exact same words, but this time it's for an audience of clients. This time, his mistress is watching. This time, everyone is waiting to see if I'll crumble. The champagne flute in my hand trembles. I set it down, very deliberately, on the nearest table. The click of glass on marble sounds like a gavel. Inside, I am fragmenting, shattering into a million pieces. 14 years of marriage. 14 years of trying, of compromising, of making myself smaller and smaller so he could feel big. It's all shattering right here on the ugly carpet of the Marriott ballroom. But on the outside, my hands are steady, my voice is clear. You're right, I say, loud enough for everyone to hear. We're not together anymore. The silence that follows is absolute, the kind of silence that rings in your ears. Sean's triumphant expression, the one he wore because he thought he was winning this public argument, just melts. It slides off his face, replaced by a slack-jawed fish-out-of-water confusion. His mouth opens, closes, opens again. What did you just say? His voice cracks on the last word. I look him dead in the eye. I said, you're right. I don't own you, and you don't own me. We're done. I turn. I turn away from his shocked face, from Michelle's barely concealed satisfaction, from Melissa's horrified sympathy, from George's uncomfortable shuffling. My heels click against the marble floor, steady, rhythmic, final. Each step feels like I'm shedding weight, like gravity is loosening its grip on me. Behind me, I hear someone, I think it's Sarah from AT, whisper to someone, "Good for her." Then, a little louder, meant for me to hear, "Good for you, Jane." I don't stop walking, not until I'm in the concrete parking garage, the smell of exhaust and damp cement filling my lungs. The December air bites at my skin, sharp and real. Snow is beginning to fall, thick, lazy flakes that stick to my hair, my dress, and my shaking hands as I fumble for my car keys. Inside the car, I sit for a minute. Just 1 minute, letting the silence of my Audi wrap around me like armor. Then I pull out my phone, and I make 3 calls. Each one, a nail in the coffin of my old life. First, Alexandra, the lawyer. She answers on the second ring. "Jane, it's late, are you?" "I'm ready," I say. "Can you file the papers tomorrow morning?" Her pause is brief. "Finally, I've been waiting years for this call. I'll have everything ready by 9 a.m. Second, Secure Life Emergency Locksmith. A woman named Diana answers, her voice warm and understanding. "We can have someone there tonight, honey. Changing locks after midnight is our specialty." Third, my brother Marcus. He manages a high-end storage facility out in Wayzata. "I need a unit," I say. No preamble. "How big?" No questions, no surprise, just immediate ride-or-die support. "Big enough for a man's entire life." "I'll have one ready by midnight. Jane, good for you." 3 calls, 3 allies, 3 steps toward freedom. As I drive home through the falling snow, the city lights of Minneapolis blurring through the tears I finally let fall, I realize something. Sean had been right about one thing. I had been trying to control something. I'd been trying to control myself, to fold myself up, to make myself fit into the tiny, suffocating shape of what he needed me to be. Tonight, in front of everyone who mattered to his fragile, inflated image, I'd finally let go of that control. And in losing it, I'd found something else entirely. Myself. The snow had turned to a nasty, stinging, freezing rain by the time I pulled into our building. Each drop hit my windshield like a tiny bullet of reality. Through the lobby's tall glass doors, I could see Denzel at his desk. Something in his posture, the way he sat a little straighter, told me he'd been waiting. I parked in my designated spot, 19F, same as our apartment, and sat for a moment, gathering the courage to walk through those doors as a woman who was about to systematically dismantle her life. Denzel stood as I entered. He's an older man, with a face that's seen too much, but his eyes are kind. Tonight, they held an expression I'd never seen before, part relief, part sorrow, like watching someone finally escape a burning building. "Ms. Thorne," he said. He used my maiden name. I hadn't even had to ask. "The locksmith called, Ms. Thorne. She's on her way up. I gave her access to the service elevator." He paused, studying my face, probably seeing the tear tracks and the exhaustion. "I also took the liberty of putting some extra boxes in the hallway outside your unit. The good ones, from the storage room." At 10:47 p.m. exactly, the universe has a sick sense of humor, Diana, the locksmith, arrived. She had a battered toolbox and eyes that had seen far too many midnight escapes. She was maybe 50, with silver streaking her dark hair and calloused hands that spoke of real work. She didn't offer empty condolences. She didn't ask a single unnecessary question. She just knelt by my door, running her fingers along the lock like a doctor examining a patient. "Commercial grade," she said, pulling out her tools. "Good bones, but outdated." She glanced up at me. "Your husband never upgraded the security features, did he?" The question was rhetorical. She was already working, metal singing against metal. "Men like that," she continued, her voice low as she concentrated, "they never think anyone would dare lock them out. Makes my job easier." As she worked, her own story unfolded in quiet fragments, between the sounds of pins clicking and tumblers turning. Her ex-husband had locked her out 17 years ago, changed the locks while she was at her own mother's funeral. Came home to my entire life on the lawn, in garbage bags, in the rain, she said, testing the new deadbolt. It made a solid, satisfying, final sound. I learned locksmithing after that, Figured if I couldn't control much else, I could at least control who got through my damn door. She handed me the new keys. They were different from the old ones, heavier, with sharp new edges that bit into my palm. Military grade, she said with a grim satisfaction. These babies can't be duplicated at some corner hardware store. You want copies? You come through me. She pulled out a business card. My personal number's on the back, for emergencies, or just to talk. While Diana packed her tools, I began. I started the systematic, emotional archaeology of ending a marriage. Each item of Sean's required a decision. His Harvard MBA diploma, which he'd insisted on hanging in our bedroom for inspiration, read, to remind me he was smarter, went into a box with bubble wrap. I grabbed a Sharpie and wrote on the side, educated but not enlightened. The Rolex I'd bought him for our 10th anniversary, 3 full months of my consulting fees, went into its original box. I tucked a small note inside. Time's up. My movements were methodical, fast, almost therapeutic. Each labeled box was a small act of revolution. His collection of first edition business books, the ones I knew for a fact he'd never read, became unread trophies. The expensive golf clubs he'd bought with what he called his bonus, but was actually our tax refund, were tagged borrowed dreams. Then, shoved behind his golf bag, my fingers brushed against something soft. I pulled it out. A pink cashmere scarf. Soft, expensive, and reeking of Michelle's cloying, cheap, sweet perfume. I held it up to the light, the physical evidence, the proof of all those Tuesday afternoons I had pretended not to know about. The Tuesdays Denzel had confirmed for me in the lobby just hours before. Instead of rage, I felt relief. Confirmation is its own kind of freedom. I folded it, carefully. I placed it in its own separate box, and I labeled it, in big, clear letters, Tuesday afternoons, personal property of your accounting department. Denzel appeared in my open doorway. He must have used his master key to come up. I brought a dolly, he said simply. He didn't wait to be asked. He just started loading the boxes. We worked in a comfortable, somber silence for nearly an hour, moving 14 years of a man's life into the hallway. Finally, as he loaded the last box, he stopped and adjusted his cap, not meeting my eyes. Ms. Thorne, I need to tell you something, he sighed. I've worked in this building for 15 years. I've seen all kinds of people, all kinds of marriages. Your husband, he thinks because he tips well at Christmas, gives me Vikings tickets sometimes, that I'm blind. But I see everything, ma'am. He finally looked at me, and I saw a flash of pure anger in his normally kind eyes. Every Tuesday, 1:15 p.m., regular as clockwork, when you're at your Pilates class. That woman from his office, the blonde one, she comes here. Takes the service elevator, not the main one, stays exactly 90 minutes. Every single week. The information should have hurt. It should have felt like a new betrayal, but it just felt like confirmation. Like the last piece of a puzzle I already knew the picture to. How long, Denzel? I asked, my voice hollow. 6, maybe 7 months. It started right after your father's funeral. Right after her father's funeral. Let that sink in. While she was grieving, this is the kind of evil that it leaves you breathless. If you think this is the lowest a human being can sink, you have no idea what's coming. And if you're sitting there watching this, feeling that same sickness I feel, hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing. It's a single click. But not subscribing, just watching this happen? It kind of tells me you're okay with this, that this is just entertainment to you. Prove me wrong. You deserve better, Ms. Thorne, Denzel said, his voice thick with disgust. Better than a man who can't even cheat with dignity. At least have the decency to go to a hotel. Not in the bed his wife sleeps in. We finished packing. His revelation settled over me, not like a shroud, but like armor. My hands moved faster now, purposefully. The wedding photo on our dresser gave me pause. We looked so young, so happy, so certain. I allowed myself exactly 3 minutes. 3 minutes to mourn those two people, to grieve the couple who'd believed in forever. Then I wrapped it in newspaper and added it to the box labeled, Fiction, a Love Story. By 11:30 p.m., the apartment was clean. It looked like a crime scene where only one person's belongings had been murdered. Every trace of Sean, his clothes, his books, his toiletries, his secret scarf, was boxed, labeled, and lining the hallway like soldiers waiting for inspection. I sat at my laptop at the dining room table, and I crafted the email, the one that would serve as both evidence and manifesto. Subject line, transparency and truth, a necessary update. The email itself was surgical. I attached the security footage that Sarah from IT, the one who'd wished me luck at the party, had secretly sent me last night. The footage from the first party, Sean's public humiliation of me, his finger jabbing, his voice booming. The video clearly showed him toasting with George right afterward, celebrating his victory. I added screenshots, credit card statements, the ones from the emergency card he thought I never checked, dozens of charges, every Tuesday afternoon. Client lunch, Marriott. Business development, Marriott. The recipient list was comprehensive. Both sets of parents, his boss, our entire friend circle, his HR department. And, because I was feeling particularly thorough, the company's entire board of directors email list, which Sean had foolishly left open on our shared home computer last week. My finger hovered over the schedule send button. 2:30 a.m. It seemed right. Late enough that he'd be locked out, drunk and confused. Early enough that people would be waking up, checking their phones and reading it with their morning coffee. Diana had finished installing the final security plate. All done, she announced, testing the handle one last time. Your fortress is secure. I walked her to the elevator. Denzel followed with her tools. As we waited, Diana turned to me. Her eyes understood everything without me having to say a word. The first night's the hardest, she said quietly. You'll want to undo it. You'll want to go back to the familiar pain just because it's familiar. Don't. She put a calloused hand on my arm. Tomorrow, you'll wake up, and you'll realize the air tastes different when you're not suffocating. The elevator arrived. She stepped in with Denzel, who was heading back to his desk. Just before the doors closed, Denzel looked at me. I'll be at my desk all night, Ms. Thorne, if you need anything at all, even just to know someone else is awake. The doors slid shut. I stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by the boxed-up remains of Carter's life. My phone was in my hand, the email primed and ready. The apartment behind me, silent and still, was mine. Legally, it always had been, but now it felt true. At exactly 11:45 p.m., I pressed send. Email scheduled successfully. 15 minutes to midnight. In 2 hours and 45 minutes, Sean would discover his keys didn't work. In 2 hours and 46 minutes, the entire world would know why. For now, I had these 15 minutes of perfect, absolute quiet, standing in my hallway, my new heavy keys clutched in my hand. The locks were changed, the emails were scheduled, the boxes were packed, the midnight operation was complete, and I was, for the first time in 14 years, finally secure. Midnight arrived with the soft, melodic chime of a grandmother clock. The sound drifted right through the wall from 19G, the apartment next door. I stood alone in my newly secured space, running my thumb over the sharp edges of my new keys, when I heard a door open in the hallway. I went to my peephole. Through the fisheye lens, I watched my neighbor, Queen, emerge from 19G. Queen was a woman in her late 70s, a retired judge, and a neighborhood legend. She was wearing an emerald green silk robe and matching slippers, and she was carrying a silver tea service as if midnight visits were perfectly routine. She paused at the mountain of boxes lining the hallway. She tilted her head, reading my labels with the careful, appraising attention of someone examining evidence. Her manicured fingers traced the words on one box. Tuesday afternoons. A small, knowing smile crossed her face. She came to my door and knocked. 3 precise, authoritative taps. Ms. Thorne, she said, her voice clear and strong when I opened the door. She also used my maiden name without any explanation. I believe we have some time before the main event. Would you join me for tea? Her apartment was exactly what I'd imagined. Book-lined walls, antique oriental rugs over dark hardwood, and the kind of furniture that whispered old money and impeccable taste. She set the tea service on a mahogany coffee table and gestured for me to sit in a wing-back chair that probably cost more than Sean's car. I was a judge for 30 years, Queen said, pouring steaming Earl Grey into a delicate china cup. Her hands were perfectly steady. Presided over every kind of human cruelty you can possibly imagine, but the cases that haunted me weren't the dramatic ones, not the crimes of passion or the sudden violence. She handed me the cup. It was the slow erosion of a woman's spirit, the daily grinding diminishment disguised as marriage. That's the worst kind of cruelty, dear, because it teaches you to be complicit in your own destruction. She moved to an antique secretary desk and pulled out a thick manila folder. She spread the contents across the coffee table. Photographs, dozens of them, with timestamps, dates, noted in her precise, elegant handwriting. I started documenting your husband's activities 6 months ago, she said, her voice calm. Not out of nosiness, you understand, out of concern. The evidence was overwhelming, chilling, far better than anything I had. Every Tuesday, 1:15 p.m., the blonde arrives separately. She takes the service elevator. Your husband follows 10 minutes later. They leave the same way, separately, around 2:45. There were photos of Sean in the lobby checking his phone, photos of Michelle entering with an oversized purse, photos of the two of them accidentally captured in the same frame near the service elevator, carefully, pointedly, not acknowledging each other. Queen had built a case. With the meticulous thoroughness of someone who understood, better than anyone, how truth needs documentation to become justice. Why? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Because I was you once, Queen said simply. 40 years ago, different husband, same story. But back then, nobody documented anything. Nobody helped. Women just disappeared into their marriages. And nobody asked any questions until they turned up in my courtroom, broken and without a shred of proof. She gently touched one of the photographs. I promised myself I'd never let another woman go through that alone, not if I could help it. At 2:23 a.m., we heard it, the ding of the elevator. Queen moved to her door, pressing her eye to the peephole with practiced ease. He's here, she whispered, a grim satisfaction in her voice. She gestured for me to join her. Through the distorted lens, I watched my husband, my ex-husband, stumble down the hallway. His gait was uneven, a combination of expensive whiskey and unearned arrogance. He reached our door. He fumbled with his key card. He swiped. Beep, boop, beep, red light. Access denied. He tried again. Beep, boop, beep, red. He tried the physical key. It didn't fit. He jammed it at the lock. The confusion on his face. It would have been comical if it wasn't so deeply, profoundly satisfying. He tried the handle, shaking it, then rattling it, then slamming his hand against the door. Jane! His voice was slurred but still demanding. Jane, open the door. This isn't funny. He progressed from confusion to irritation to pure, white-hot rage in the span of about 30 seconds. He started pounding. Open the door right now, Jane! Queen looked at me, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow raised in a silent question. I nodded. She opened her door, with theatrical, unbothered calm. She was still holding her teacup. She looked every inch the distinguished retired judge, despite the hour. Mr. Lawson, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the absolute authority of 3 decades on the bench. Having some trouble? Sean spun toward her, nearly losing his balance. My key! It's not working! She... How curious, Queen said, taking a delicate, deliberate sip of her tea. Though I suppose it makes sense. Keys generally stop working when one no longer lives somewhere. The color drained from Sean's face, and that's when he saw them. The boxes, the wall of his entire life, lining the hallway. He saw his name, in my handwriting, on every single label. What? What is this? I believe the legal term is personal property removal, Mr. Lawson, Queen said, her voice dry. Though I must admit, I particularly enjoyed the labeling system. Tuesday afternoons was especially creative. She gestured toward the box with the pink scarf. Your friend, Ms. Mills, left that behind last week. Rather careless of her. And right on cue. At 2:30 a.m. exactly. Sean's phone began to buzz. Bzz, bzz, bzz. It wasn't just one buzz. It was an incessant, vibrating swarm. He pulled it out of his pocket, his face illuminated by the harsh blue light of the screen. And we watched. We watched his face cycle through shock, then rage, then pure, unfiltered desperation as the notifications popped up. Email from Jane Thorne. Email from Patricia Lawson, Mom. Email from Mr. Davidson, Boss. Email from HR Department. Email from Board of Directors Chair. She sent it to everyone, he whispered, then louder, screaming at my locked door. You sent it to everyone! He launched himself at the door, pounding with both fists. You can't do this! This is my home! I have rights, Jane! You psycho bitch, open the door! Yes, this is the moment. The sound of that phone blowing up is the most satisfying sound in the world. He is getting everything he deserves, and it is glorious. If you agree, if you are cheering right now, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. Let's ride this wave together. If you don't subscribe, if you just watch this pathetic meltdown, I have to assume you feel sorry for him. Go to the comments and try to defend him. I'll wait. As Sean raged, Queen calmly pulled out her own phone, and she began recording. Please, do continue your performance, Mr. Lawson, she said, her voice projecting easily over his screams. I'm sure Ms. Thorne's attorney will find this very helpful. Threatening behavior, attempted forced entry, intoxicated aggression. It's all quite compelling. Sean froze, mid-pound. His wild eyes finally noticed the small, discreet security camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling, the one I had installed last month after sensing something was shifting. His bravado didn't just leak, it evaporated. Instantly, the man who had humiliated me in front of his colleagues, who had declared his independence from our marriage, who had screamed at me to open my door, he actually whimpered. Queen and I exchanged a look that spoke volumes about the particular, pathetic fragility of men who mistake control for strength. She kept recording as Sean, my big, powerful, Wharton-educated husband, sank to his knees in front of my door. His voice shifted, cracked, became a pathetic, pleading whine. Jane, please, baby, please, let's just talk about this. We can work it out, please. I believe she already tried talking, Mr. Lawson, Queen said, not moving her phone. At 2 separate company events, if the video evidence is accurate, you chose public humiliation instead of private conversation. Now you are experiencing the consequences of that choice. He gathered his boxes, his hands shaking, muttering under his breath about lawyers and unfair treatment. As the elevator doors closed on his defeated, slumped figure, Queen turned to me. Would you like to watch the sunrise? She asked. I make excellent coffee to go with dawn revelations. We sat by her window, the city still dark, but just beginning to stir. Queen pulled out an old photo album. She opened it to a page from 1983, a younger version of herself, fierce and solitary, in full judicial robes. My first husband was a surgeon, she said, her voice soft. Brilliant, charming, and systematically cruel. He made me feel small for being smart, inadequate for being successful. It took me 10 years to realize the lock keeping me trapped wasn't on any door. It was in my head. The sky began to lighten, painting the clouds in strokes of pink and gold. Your generation is different, Jane, she continued. You document, you share, you refuse to disappear quietly into these bad marriages. She raised her coffee cup to me. To locks that change, both physical and mental. We sat in comfortable silence, 2 women from different generations, bound by the exact same understanding. The city woke up around us, and somewhere out there in the cold, gray morning, Sean was discovering that his entire world had fundamentally shifted while he'd been passed out, drunk on his own arrogance. The reckoning had come, not with a bang, but with a click. The sound of a new lock, a scheduled email, and the quiet, steady support of a retired judge who understood that justice sometimes looks like Earl Grey tea and carefully documented truth. Queen's coffee had grown cold in my hands. The sun was now fully up, painting the whole Minneapolis skyline in shades of gold. We sat in that comfortable silence, 2 women who understood that some victories taste better when they're shared quietly. Then, at exactly 7:00 a.m., my phone shattered the peace. The ringtone was an obnoxious air horn I'd assigned specifically to avoid the caller, Patricia Lawson, Sean's mother. I looked at Queen. She just nodded encouragingly. Sometimes, she said softly, the most surprising allies come from the most unexpected places. I answered. Patricia's voice, usually so sharp and dripping with that Connecticut breeding disapproval, was trembling. Jane, I've seen the email, the video, the The statements, "Oh my God, what has my son done?" For 14 years, this woman had treated me like the hired help who'd somehow tricked her precious, perfect boy into marriage. She'd made snide comments about my father's blue-collar background. She'd suggested I take etiquette classes. She once told her garden club friends that Sean had married down for love, poor thing. Now, her voice held something I had never, ever heard before. Shame. "He did exactly what you raised him to believe he could do, Patricia," I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. "Take whatever he wanted with zero consequences." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. It might have been a sob. I raised him better than this. His father would be appalled. His father was having an affair with his secretary for a decade before he died, Patricia. Sean learned from the best." The silence on the line stretched, thick with years of pretense crumbling to dust. "I'm keeping the Christmas china you gave me," I said, watching the light dance on Queen's coffee table. "Keep it all, dear," she whispered. "The silver, the crystal, everything I always insisted you weren't good enough to inherit. You earned it. You earned it by surviving him." She hung up. My phone immediately buzzed with another call. Sarah, from IT. Her voice was electric. "Jane, oh my God, you are not going to believe what I found. Actually, scratch that. You probably will." I put her on speaker. Queen leaned in, her judicial instincts clearly piqued by the promise of more evidence. "After I saw that video last night," Sarah said, her typing clattering in the background, "I did some deep digging. With my admin access, your husband has been using company resources for everything. Those Tuesday afternoon client meetings at the Marriott, he's been expensing the hotel rooms, charging them to the Henderson account." Queen raised an eyebrow. "The Henderson account? That's their biggest client." "It gets worse," Sarah said, her voice dropping. "That startup, the crypto thing with his buddy George, I found the incorporation documents. It doesn't exist. It's a shell. George has been investigated for fraud twice, once in Boston, once in Chicago. The whole thing, Jane, it was a con, a complete fabrication to get your inheritance." My legs went weak. I sank back into Queen's wingback chair. $400,000, my father's entire life's work, nearly stolen by the man who had vowed to protect me. "I forwarded everything to HR and to Mr. Davidson," Sarah continued, righteous fury in her voice. "I also sent anonymous copies to the SEC whistleblower department. The fraud division loves this kind of thing." By the time I ended the call, my phone was exploding. The digital unraveling of Sean's entire life was happening in real time. A text from Jennifer in legal. "We never liked how he talked about you, like you were an accessory he'd purchased. So glad you're free." A text from Tom in sales. "That video was brutal. You handled it with more class than he ever deserved. Drinks on me when you're ready." Even a text from George's wife, Melissa. "I'm leaving him too. Found out about the fraud investigation from your email. You inspired me to stop ignoring the red flags. But the message that stopped me cold was an email from Mr. Davidson himself. Sean's boss. Ms. Thorne, I am mortified. I apologize for our company culture that enabled this behavior. Mr. Lawson's employment is terminated, effective immediately, pending a full investigation into corporate fraud." Separately. "Would you consider consulting for us? We could desperately use someone with your dignity and strategic thinking." I screenshot everything. At 10 o'clock a.m., Denzel called from the lobby. "Ms. Thorne, there's a flower delivery here. 3 dozen long-stemmed roses. Card just says I'm sorry. I've refused them, as you requested, but the delivery guy says they're paid for." "Donate them to the hospital down the street, Denzel," I said. "Tell them they're from an anonymous donor who is celebrating her freedom." "With pleasure, Ms. Thorne. Also, there's a young man here. Says he's Mr. Lawson's brother. A Mr. Danny Lawson?" Danny. Sean's younger brother. The one who just finished law school. "Send him up, Denzel, to 19G, please." Queen offered to leave, but I asked her to stay. "Witnesses," she said, nodding, "are always valuable." Danny arrived, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. He stood in Queen's doorway, shifting his weight, his resemblance to Sean softened by a genuine, deep-seated embarrassment. "Jane, I am so sorry to bother you." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Sean." He called me, freaking out. He said if I came here and talked to you, talk some sense into you, he'd pay off my student loans. He finally looked at me, his eyes full of shame. $70,000. I'm guessing that's not happening, is it? He doesn't have $70,000, Danny, I said gently. He's been living off my income for 2 years. His salary barely covers his car payment and his wardrobe. Danny's face went from shame to pure, unadulterated rage. That lying piece of... He caught himself glancing at Queen. Sorry, ma'am. He told me you were the one overspending, that you were bleeding him dry. Over the next hour, sitting in Queen's living room, Danny filled in the rest of the blanks. The gambling debts from Sean's MBA days that his mother had quietly paid off. The previous engagement to a banker's daughter in New York that ended when her father discovered Sean's lies about his family's wealth. The investment schemes at his first job that HR had buried to avoid a scandal. I always wondered why he was so secretive, Danny said, staring into his coffee. Now it all makes sense. He wasn't protecting his privacy. He was protecting his con game. By noon, Sean's carefully constructed world had collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. His job, his reputation, his family's illusions, his financial scams, everything exposed. And I sat in Queen's apartment watching it all burn. My temporary command center was still Queen's apartment when my lawyer, Alexandra, arrived at 2 p.m. She swept into the room, her leather briefcase clicking open. She was all sharp angles and sharper strategy. Stay, Alexandra commanded, as Queen offered to leave. A retired judge as a witness? That's better than a signed confession. She spread color-coded folders across Queen's dining table, like a general mapping out a battle. The video from the party is gold, she said. Your testimony, Judge, is platinum. But this? She tapped a thick folder marked in red. Fraud. This evidence from your IT friend? This is diamonds. This changes everything. She walked me through it. His public declaration is constructive abandonment. The affair with Michelle, documented by you, Judge, proves infidelity. But the financial fraud? Oh, he played himself. She smiled, a cold, predatory smile. That eliminates any claim to marital assets. He doesn't get the apartment. He doesn't get your savings. He doesn't get anything. How long will this take? I asked. Depends, Alexandra said. We can push for summary judgment. You're divorced in 90 days. Clean, fast. Or we can slow play it. Let him marinate in the uncertainty. Let him sweat while his world finishes collapsing. I thought about 14 years. 14 years of being told I was too emotional, too controlling, too much. 14 years of his gaslighting disguised as concern. Make him sweat, I said. At 3:30 p.m., Denzel called again. His voice was tense. Miss Thorne, there's a young woman here, a Ms. Michelle Mills, from your husband's office. She's crying. She says she has information you need. Alexandra nodded. Mistresses often become our star witnesses. Let her up. Michelle arrived, looking nothing like the confident chin-up woman from the party. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her mascara a smudged disaster. She was younger than I'd realized, maybe 25. I'm sorry, she sobbed before she even sat down. I'm so sorry. I didn't know I knew he was married, but he said you were separated. He said you were crazy, vindictive, that you were trying to take everything from him in the divorce. Alexandra pulled out her phone and hit record. Tell us everything, Ms. Mills. And she did. He'd approached her 8 months ago, said his marriage was a living hell, that his wife, me, was unstable. He'd painted himself as a victim, trapped by a controlling woman. He showed me around your apartment, she whispered, looking at me, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. He said it was his. He talked about selling it after the divorce was final. He said the inheritance from your father was actually his trust fund, and that you had stolen it. The calculated, breathtaking cruelty of his lies sucked the air from the room. He had inverted our entire reality. Just to seduce a 25-year-old from accounting, she wasn't done. He promised me everything, she cried. A promotion, marriage, a life together. He sent me these. She pulled out her phone. Screenshots of jewelry he was going to buy her, real estate listings for their future home, all dated months ago, proving he was planning this new life while pretending to work on our marriage. As Alexandra was saving the photos, my phone rang. My brother, Marcus. His voice was tight with a rage I recognized. Jane, you need to know something. I was organizing Sean's crap in the storage unit. I found something in his golf bag, taped to the bottom. What kind of something? Bank statements, a separate account. In his name only. He's been siphoning money from your joint account for 3 years. Small amounts, $500 here, $800 there. Jane, it adds up. It's almost $40,000. The rage that flooded me was clean, pure. It wasn't the messy hurt of betrayal, it was fire. Send me photos of everything, Marcus, I said, my voice cold. Already done, he said. I can handle this the family way, Jane. I can make sure he understands consequences. No, I said, looking at Alexandra. The legal way. The legal way will hurt him so much more. The mediation was set for a sterile conference room downtown. Thursday. Sean's lawyer, no doubt realizing they had zero leverage, had begged for it, desperate to avoid a public court hearing. I wore my best suit. Not for him. For me. It was armor. Sean entered wearing his important meeting Harvard tie. His eyes were bloodshot. His usual confidence was cracked, but he was still trying. He tried that old smile, the one that used to make me forgive everything. Jane, he started, his voice dripping with a practiced fake sincerity. Baby, we can work this out. Remember what we had? Remember Paris? I didn't say a word. I just pulled out the folder Sarah from IT had compiled. I opened it to the expense reports from our anniversary trip to Paris. The trip I thought I'd paid for. He had charged the entire thing, the hotel, the dinners, the flights, to his company, as client entertainment, and I'd included the phone records, the ones showing he was texting Michelle from the top of the Eiffel Tower. I slid the folder across the table. His lawyer's face went white as he read. This could be criminal fraud. It is criminal fraud, Alexandra confirmed, her voice cheerful, along with embezzlement from marital assets, constructive abandonment, and documented infidelity with a subordinate, which, by the way, Ms. Mills is very happy to testify about. Sean's face crumbled. The man who'd humiliated me, who'd stolen from me, who'd planned to take everything, finally understood. He wasn't in control. He had never been in control. He'd just been living in a delusion I had paid for, and the bill was finally due. Here are our terms, Alexandra said, sliding over a single piece of paper. Ms. Thorne keeps all assets. The apartment, 100% of the savings, all investments. Mr. Lawson keeps his personal belongings, which are already in storage. He will also sign this comprehensive NDA, preventing him from ever discussing this marriage, or Ms. Thorne. In exchange, she will not pursue criminal charges for the $40,000 he stole, and she will not forward the additional fraud evidence to the district attorney. It was a kill shot. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. I heard the words, fraud and prison. Sean's hand trembled as he picked up the pen. He signed. The legal death of our marriage. New Year's Eve, 3 weeks later. The building's annual rooftop party. I wasn't going to go. But Queen showed up at my door at 7 p.m., holding a jewelry box. These were my late husband's cufflinks, she said, opening it to reveal 2 massive diamonds. I had them made into earrings. He was a real man, Jane, the kind who supported his wife's success instead of feeling threatened by it. She fastened them to my ears. Wear them tonight. You need to be seen thriving. My dress choice was deliberate. Not the burgundy of my humiliation, not the black of mourning. Fire engine red, the kind of red that demands attention, declares war and victory all at once. When I stepped off the elevator onto the sparkling rooftop, the conversation stuttered. But it wasn't the silence of scandal. It was respect. Denzel, in his formal uniform, announced, Ms. Ruby Thorne. The emphasis on my name was a declaration, and then applause. It started with Queen, but it spread, the whole building. They were applauding my courage, the simple act of refusing to disappear. I was 2 glasses of champagne in, actually enjoying myself, when the elevator chimed. 10:47 p.m., the universe and its timing. Sean stepped out. He had Michelle on his arm. He wore his most expensive suit, the one I'd bought him. Michelle looked like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. The room's energy shifted, but not how Sean had planned. The conversations didn't stop. They got louder. People turned their backs, a synchronized collective snub. He went to the bar. The bartender suddenly had to check inventory. He tried to join a group. They dispersed like smoke. He was invisible. Sean, his face turning that familiar blotchy red, made a beeline for me, but Denzel materialized, flanked by 2 other doormen. They formed a subtle, unmistakable wall. Sir, Denzel said, his voice carrying across the now quiet rooftop, you are not on the resident list. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave, unless... A current resident vouches for you? The silence was total. 60 people, people who'd shared elevators with him for years. Not one person moved. Not one voice spoke up. The rejection was absolute. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "I lived here for—" "Lived," Queen interrupted, stepping forward. "Past tense. The building is very particular about security these days." And at exactly midnight, Queen took the microphone for the New Year's toast. "To new beginnings," she started, her eyes finding mine. "To women who realize their worth after years of being told they have none. And to men who learn that consequences, like karma, always come due." She paused, taking a sip, and looked right at Sean. "And to Ms. Jane Thorne, who reminded us all that sometimes the best renovation you can do to a home is removing the trash. That's it. That is the single most savage, incredible moment of justice I have ever heard. Removing the trash. If you are not on your feet cheering for Queen and Jane right now, what is wrong with you? This is the victory we've been waiting for. If you're with me, you must subscribe. This is the moment. Hit that button and join the celebration. Or, are you on his side? If you're not subscribing, I'm just going to assume you're on Sean's side. The trash's side. The laughter that erupted wasn't cruel. It was cathartic. Glasses raised to me from every direction. Sean's composure shattered. "This is a conspiracy. You've all been turned against me. This is illegal." "Oh, Mr. Lawson," Queen said, as if just noticing him. "You're still here. How embarrassing for you." That's when Michelle broke. She pulled her arm from Sean's, walked right up to me through the crowd that parted for her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming. "I was an idiot. He played me. I'm sorry." She walked to the elevator and left, without a single look back. Sean, now completely alone, began to melt down, ranting about his rights, about how we'd all ruined his life. "You ruined your own life, Sean," Queen said, her microphone still on. "Jane just stopped being your cleanup crew." That's when real security arrived. As they flanked him, he made one last, desperate threat. "I'll destroy you in court, Jane. You'll get nothing." And from the corner, Alexandra, my lawyer, who'd been quietly sipping champagne, laughed, a loud, sharp laugh that cut through everything. "With what money, Sean?" she called out. "Your assets are frozen pending the fraud investigation. Your job is gone. Your mistress just publicly dumped you. Hell, even your mother took Jane's side. Happy New Year." They escorted him out. The party erupted. The countdown to midnight began again. Queen had paused it for the drama. As the ball dropped, I stood there in my red dress and my diamond earrings, surrounded by neighbors who had become allies. The new year arrived, and for the first time in 14 years, I celebrated, without a single thought about what mood Sean would be in tomorrow. The divorce was finalized on June 15th. It took 12 minutes. The judge reviewed the agreement, saw Sean's no contest plea, bought with my silence on his criminal fraud, and banged the gavel. Done. As we filed out, he lingered on the courthouse steps. "I loved you once," he said, his voice flat. I paused. "No, Sean," I said, channeling all the wisdom Queen had given me. "You loved what I provided. The stability, the money, the cover for your inadequacies. There's a difference between loving a person and loving what they do for you." He had no answer. He just turned and walked away. He vanished into the downtown crowd. And I knew, with a certainty that settled in my bones, I would never see him again. The thought brought only peace, clean, complete, like the click of a well-made lock. 2 weeks later, Patricia, his mother, called. She came to my apartment carrying the leather-bound family jewelry case. "I was wrong about you," she said, her voice trembling. "I withheld these because I was a snob. I thought you weren't good enough for our family. The truth is, we weren't good enough for you." She told me Sean was living with his brother Danny. He'd gotten a job at an Enterprise rent-a-car near the airport. He was already dating someone new, telling them he was divorced because his wife had cheated on him. Some fictions, it seems, are too comforting to let go. By September, my consulting firm had tripled its client base. The story had become a Minneapolis business legend. "If you can plan a divorce like a military operation," one CEO told me over lunch, "imagine what you can do for my merger." Queen and I started something. We call it the Lock Club, a support group held in her apartment for women learning to control their own doors, both literal and metaphorical. This morning, I stood in my apartment, truly completely mine. The locks are smart locks now, controlled by my phone, encrypted, secure. I made my coffee, 1 sugar, oat milk, exactly how I like it. Freedom lives in these small choices as much as the big ones. The morning light caught the diamonds Queen had given me. They sparkled as I raised my cup in a silent toast. To endings that become beginnings, to locks that protect instead of trap, and to the woman I finally became simply by refusing to remain who I was expected to be. The lock that changed everything, I realized, wasn't just the one on my apartment door. It was the one I'd finally installed in my own heart, securing my worth, and that lock, that one will never be changed.